What's up, everybody? It's your boy. Have y'all ever thought about how insane the 2008 housing market crash really was? Like, I know we all watched The Big Short and it was a great movie or whatever, but have you taken a second to internalize how insane it was that the entire country was plunged into a housing crisis and correlated depression, largely due to a few already hyper-wealthy, nerdy bank guys being allowed to essentially gamble with other people's money, placing short bets against an already insane premise of mortgage-backed securities, wherein people's mortgages are bundled and then sold to other lenders? Like, what are we doing here? AKA Reed from Shameless Nerd. Today's video is about optimism. If you have seen any of my other videos and have stumbled across this one and you're thinking, hey, I remember this guy, I liked his video about the Angry Birds movie. One way you could consider supporting my channel is to click the subscribe button and the bell so you'll be notified the next time I upload a video, say about a kid's movie from 2016 or a philosophical case for an ideological political protest, for example. Please drop a like if you end up liking this video, and if you'd like to support me directly, the best way to do that is to email me at readfromshamelessnerd@gmail.com with money wire transfer instructions. But if you want something simpler, you could click the join button here on YouTube and become a member of the channel like these wonderful people on the screen now. All right, let's get into it. On to yet another extremely controversial idea that's certainly going to bother a lot of people. And for once, I will start by cutting to the chase. I believe that optimism is deeply important. I believe that it is an act of defiance and protest, and I believe that it is one of the most strategically valuable skills, which I'll talk about in this video, to work on. I believe optimism is not only nice and good, but an imperative principle that is specifically what will save the world. This is going to be by far my most sprawling, comprehensive, multifaceted, research-laden video, and there will be several chapters and sections of this video so you can kind of skip around or revisit different ideas at different times, because it's all serving the same concept but from a bunch of different ways. You can use the scroll bar below or the pinned comment to go to various chapters if you'd like. So, first of all, there are a couple important disclaimers. Please watch this part and please remember and consider these points before you comment, because after these disclaimers, I'm going to spend the rest of the video arguing only one side and ignoring these points after making them now. Number one, and maybe most importantly, I recognize the privileged position that I am in, and I understand wholeheartedly that preaching about optimism is a really hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, especially marginalized and disenfranchised groups in this country. And I recognize that this is all very easy for me to say as a person who looks the way I do and is firmly a lower middle class professional who doesn't have to worry about food being on the table or my rights being stripped from me, a white dude in the Southeast United States. And I'm not preaching naivety or ignorance. I'm proposing optimism in educated, informed political defiance of these systems of oppression. Number two, I have degrees in English and philosophy, not in political science or economics. And I have done multiple months worth of research for this video, and I've read a ton of scholarly articles and op-eds and even 2 full books, but I am not, nor am I purporting to be, a political expert. However, neither are you. None of us are, unless you really are, unless Obama is watching this video, and if so, what about the drones in Syria? Doing real, fact-forward, thorough research is all that we can do, and I promise that I've done a lot of it for this video, and I will link to every source I used in the description. Number 3, I am going to largely criticize the political left in this video. I think you can all probably guess where I stand on the political spectrum, but I'm actually not going to spend a lot of time in this video criticizing the right, and the reason is twofold. One, I'm not going to be a good messenger to people on the right. They're going to have just heard me talk about acknowledging my privilege and having used the word marginalized. They're going to watch me spend a good chunk of this video later talking about climate change, and it's just not going to serve much of a purpose for them. That's not what this video is, and maybe I'll make a video like that later, but this video is for us, or for the few exceptionally open-minded individuals considering it, to do a little introspection and to consider what we could do better. I believe in what I call the double down problem, and me spending this video complaining about the things we all already agree with would only push anyone in that gray area further away and would be counterproductive. In my opinion, this ignorance of nuance and capacity for self-reflection is what allowed the current administration to win, and it's largely to blame for the conservative wave we've seen, in which many of us on the left are ignoring over the last few years. To illustrate, in 2016, when the GOP candidates' positions on opposition to trade agreements and opening questioning of governmental corruption appealed to a moderate liberal or previously centrist independent voter, and then the liberal candidate openly condemned all Republican voters as irredeemable, those voters are not going to swing left, and probably not ever again. We have to make room for nuance, for some slight dissonance, and maybe, just maybe, for some optimism. And finally, quickly, number 4, I know, obviously, that there are some horrible things going on. I try to make it clear throughout this video, but I want to explicitly state here that this concept is not incompatible with being informed. I am not advocating for ignorance, nor am I unaware that things are not great right now for a lot of people all over the country and the world. And I would argue that ultimately, that makes this idea even more important. So let's talk about that. Optimism. Section 1, Chapter 1. Optimism Defined. There are several different definitions of optimism. A quick Google gives you this: hopefulness and confidence about the future or successful outcome of something. And this is nice. This is a great little starting point. I think it's a good general outlook, but a definition I prefer is as follows. Optimism is the attitude or mindset of expecting events to lead to particularly positive, favorable, desirable, and hopeful outcomes. Expectation is the important operative word here, because to me, and in the specific way I intend in my personal philosophy about optimism, optimism is necessarily incompatible with naivety. Optimism is having an expectation that things will work out. Expectation implies an understanding of the context and of justice. Expectation means a belief that someone will or should achieve something. Optimism to me is believing that things should work out, that the players involved, the actions being chosen, the systems of power have an obligation to make and thus necessitate that the future will be good. I get in trouble with my smart friends who claim I'm naive for believing we'll solve large-scale problems and that the world isn't doomed. My dad claims that because I don't watch the news, I'm not updated up to the second, that there's no way I can believe, or in his opinion even have a right to argue, that the world is heading in any direction, much less a good one. And I disagree, because optimism isn't a passive state. Optimism is a deliberate, guiding philosophy. Optimism is an expectation. I believe that things should be good, and thus they will. And in that subtle difference lies the more passive, colloquial understanding that optimism is a passive belief that everything will just work out. But that colloquial understanding ignores that component of expectation, and upon that expectation, this philosophy hinges. Because, Section 1, Chapter 2, Optimism as Political Power. From the beginning of organized societies, there have been oppressive agents in those societies. And from the earliest formation of oppression, there has been in them deliberate emphasis on instilling pessimism in the oppressed to be. Machiavelli wrote in 1513, quote, "Tyrants do not care if they are hated so long as those under them do not love each other." Alex Steffen, author of a cool book called World Changing, puts it like this: entrenched interests use despair, confusion, and apathy to prevent change. I'll link to an absolutely awesome article Steffen wrote in the description. It is important, or really it is imperative, to the oppressive powers in place that we are not optimistic. And this is not a novel idea, this is not new, this is very simple, really. When you do not believe that a positive outcome is possible, you will not work toward that outcome. If you don't work toward that outcome, the opposite but correlated negative outcome will come about much quicker, more fully, and importantly to the systems in power, without resistance. The opposite of our optimism is not pessimism, the belief that the worst will happen. It is hopelessness, the belief that there is no hope for the best to happen. And hopelessness, as you would likely imagine, blocks, quote, goal-directed processing, according to a study led by Temple University researchers in 2024. Having limited goal-directed processing capability is very different than being passively of the belief that something bad is going to happen. Hopelessness alters our brains. It makes us less able to process goals. It makes us necessarily complacent. And this is why the mechanisms of power and oppression mandate a death to optimism. Complacency is what prevents change, amendment, rebellion. Pessimism, believing something bad is going to happen, might enrage us and drive us to reckless action, but complacency keeps the wheels turning. Cynicism is not rebellious, even though the guys with blue mohawks in Sum 41 looked pretty cool in 2004. Optimism is rebellious, believing that we can effect change, that there is an expectation for the future to look better than the present, that thusly it is in fact our obligation to endeavor to bring about that change. That is rebellious. That's cool. That's counterculture. The hippies weren't pessimistic. The Haitian revolutionists weren't pessimistic. The Stonewall rioters weren't pessimistic. The American revolutionists weren't pessimistic. Section 1, Chapter 3. Optimism as an advisor. And this is where I think optimism is the most important. Complacency resulting from hopelessness is a linear trip to mediocrity, and conversely, optimism is the mechanism through which we reach exceptionality and self-actualization, and even more importantly, how we affect change in others and work toward building that world we optimistically have an expectation will exist. I'll use my own life as an example. I am good at very few things. One of them is making marinara sauce, and one of them is being a middle school English teacher. The singular sole reason that I am a good teacher is optimism. I am surrounded by teachers that do not believe in their students. Teaching is a very draining and stressful job. It is chaotic and can be deflating at times, and many of the teachers I work with have internalized that. And in the break room or at our planning meetings, I often hear in the tone and format of stereotypical workplace banter that's not very serious, "Man, these kids can't write a sentence," or "My kids in third period just could not handle that activity today," or "These kids are so lazy." And my coworkers are justifiably frustrated, but they are objectively wrong. And they are creating the self-fulfilling prophecy that is dragging them down. I have more successes, fewer failures, literally like fewer students fail my classes than my colleagues, more self-fulfilling teachable moments or whatever, and more fun than many of my colleagues because of my optimism. I have an expectation that things will go well in my classroom. And because of that expectation, I create an environment where students can do well. And then I help them to get there because that's what my job is. I take on more fun projects and do more outside the box stuff with my students. And in turn, in the same way that my colleagues' pessimism is self-perpetuating, the successes in my classroom are self-perpetuating because kids, even 7th graders, are human beings. And when my students grow to realize they have a teacher that believes in them, that loves them, and importantly, wants to allow them to do some fun outside the box projects along the way, they are more likely to believe in themselves, and they are more likely to successfully learn stuff in my classroom. They work harder, they're more willing to deal with some of the drier, more boring things that we have to do, and they generally stay on board with me a little bit better because they know I believe in them, they know I don't hate them, and they know that I have an expectation that it's going to be good. Does it always work? No. I have a scar on my arm from a girl at the second school that I worked at, story for another time. But generally speaking, my optimism is my advisor, and it's the best advice I get. In my classroom, I allow students the opportunity to meet a high expectation, and then I'll meet them where they are if they don't. In the pessimistic classroom across the hall, the students are told they can't achieve the high expectation, and then they're given a lower expectation, and they're never granted the opportunity to do anything fun or challenging because the complacency has reached them. They've internalized the only lesson they've actually been taught in hopelessness, and their effort adjusts accordingly. Optimism is the principle under which all good things are attempted. If we do not learn to believe that good things are possible, then we will never attempt to make good things happen. Section 1, Chapter 4, Optimism as a Skill. But what if you're not optimistic? This is a character trait. I can't help being cynical, skeptical, that's just how I am. Optimism is a skill that we can sharpen, and one that even if you disagree with everything else I've said, which if that's the case, you're insane for continuing to watch the video, so I'm like probably 20 minutes in, but even if you disagree with everything you've seen so far, optimism is a skill that will improve your life, selfishly speaking, demonstrably, and on a day-to-day basis. First of all, there is an important framework change that I think we should all take note of. Optimism versus pessimism. Most people say that the smart perspective, the educated perspective, is that of the pessimist, that ignorance is bliss, that believing in simplicity, black and white, being naive and ultimately stupid, that's the only way to optimism. And I'd argue that's backwards. It's actually pretty dumb, from my perspective, to be pessimistic. A pessimist just believes the worst is going to happen. A pessimist, as Dr. Martin Seligman, author of Learned Optimism, puts it, someone with a pessimistic explanatory style trying to make sense of some bad news might say, "I failed, I always fail, and I fail at everything." Those with an optimistic style, though, might look at the same bad news and say, "This other thing made me fail at this, and it won't last. I made this meal in a rush," versus "I am a bad cook," for example. Pessimism is ignorance. It's ignoring context, nuance, detail. Optimism is rooted in seeing things for what they are, complex and interrelated. So we must first understand that we are not trying to unlearn anything in pursuing optimism. This is the polar opposite of an anti-intellectual position. Optimism is a self-improvement tool foremost. For example, there's a famous study that involves university swimmers who self-reported as pessimists and then conversely as optimists. In the study, researchers lied to them and told both groups that they clocked a slower time than normal. And in the following race, optimists swam at normal or slightly higher than normal speeds because it was a fluke, right? But their more pessimistic counterparts recorded a worse time. The lesson they took from the past, that they were slower, bled into their future. And further, according to an article published in the MIT Press Reader, MIT, not the Guardian, all right? There is, quote, mounting evidence that optimism may serve as a powerful tool for preventing disease and promoting healthy aging. It's good for you. Optimists live an average of 11 to 15% longer than pessimists. You can and should read the whole article for more detail, but in extreme summarization, the main reasons are causal and biological. Firstly, those who are optimistic tend to take better care of themselves, causal. And secondly, those who are pessimistic don't, but also experience, quote, elevated stress hormones like cortisol and noradrenaline, which lead to heightened levels of body inflammation and promotes the onset of disease. And the good news is, optimism is a learned behavior. We can be more optimistic if we want to, and this is how. First of all, luckily, according to that same article, the most powerful step in becoming more optimistic is just wanting to be. Becoming conscious and even slightly more aware of our pessimistic tendencies makes us demonstrably less pessimistic. When something happens to you, or you read something, or you watch the news, which first of all, don't watch the news, try to think about the ways in which it might not be the end of the world. Force yourself to think, that might not actually be represented accurately. It might be hyperbole. Hint, it absolutely is. See chapter 2 of this video. Or we might be able to solve that and look into it a little bit. And then if you still want to be worried about it, feel free. Just taking a split second to become conscious of an attempt to be more optimistic is the single most powerful tool in that pursuit. Because our perspectives, our paradigms are habitual and unconscious, as put by Dr. Alan Rozanski, who led one of the studies I've referenced in this video. The more we do this, the more time and effort we put into the pursuit of optimism, the better we'll get at it. One small practice you can adopt is to practice the 3 Ps. Whenever you read something or tell yourself a story about something that happened to you, flip the 3 Ps: permanence, pervasiveness, and personal. Think about the ways in which this bad or scary or complex thing may be impermanent instead of world-destroying. Think about the ways in which this problem or thought or issue might not be as pervasive as it seems, how it might be addressed specifically and not actually be an aspect of every single anxious thought you're having about it. And then think about the personal aspect of it. Remove yourself from the situation. Think about the ways in which this issue or event might be contextual and nuanced, and it might not be all your fault, actually. Those don't apply neatly to every single topic or event, but going through the 3 Ps as practice is a good way to train yourself to not fall victim to immediate pessimism. So, optimism is a means of political power. It is a principled advisor. It is a learned skill. And the best news of all is that we actually have a lot to be optimistic about. Section 2, change. In this section of the video, I'm literally just going to list a bunch of news related to positive change that we can point to as reasons to be optimistic about the future. I'll talk a little bit about each one, but as usual, I will link to all the sources for all this stuff in the description if you want to, and you should read more about whatever you like. Hello and welcome to Shameless Nerd News. As always, I'm your host, the ghost of Nintendo's abandoned 1995 Virtual Boy console, and here are tonight's top stories. The inflation rate has finally recovered. Many don't want to talk about this for fear of accidentally giving unwarranted credit to the current administration, who is, to be clear, not responsible for this as of now. But regardless, in March of 2025, the inflation rate, which is the average inflation over the previous calendar year, was 2.4%, the lowest it has been since March 2021, which was the final month that did not feature pandemic-era data. Core inflation is actually down below expectation. Gas prices are down 6.3%. Used car prices have eased, and while food prices did slightly increase, that rate was 0.4%. Which is, I'm being told, below expectation and lower than any month of the previous 12. Renewable energy capacity in 2024 was at 50% growth. This is the highest it has been in over 20 years, and one of the key goals of tripling renewable energy sources by the end of the decade is now firmly within reach. As of 2025, there are now 7 countries that are powered entirely by renewable sources. This is vital in proving the feasibility of this as an eventual goal, and while absolutely still a small number in the grand scheme of things on a global scale, there are 7 countries who are entirely green. That's huge. The overruling of Roe v. Wade in the landmark Dobbs case, which overturned federal abortion protections, is facilitating the creation of more legislative protections for abortion care than there have ever been, and it is putting abortion on the ballot. The good news about this is that, quote, abortion is on the ballot and all the arrows point in the same direction, which is toward protecting access to care. For example, direct referenda on abortion protections in Kansas and Kentucky were rejected by voters. Many other states have passed amendments to state constitutions that protect abortion, and these protections will be harder to peel back because of their spread between states and their explicit nature. Okay, this one is crazy. Renewable energy is set to surpass coal as the world's biggest source of power this year. The first effective vaccines for malaria, which kills between 500,000 to over 1 million people every year, have received recommendations from the World Health Organization and are already being implemented in several countries. It is likely that malaria will be 75% eradicated by the year 2030. In 2014, 43% of parents reported as believing that social media risks outweighed the benefits for kids. A 2024 study reported that now, not only has that criteria shifted wildly, but 98% of parents, 98%, believe that, quote, social media platforms are dangerous to users under 18. That is a massive shift in only 10 years, and given the overwhelming number of studies published in recent years about the adverse effects of social media, and particularly short-form video content, you should go check out some of my other videos on this topic, being even worse than previously thought, it is eminently likely that the next generation will be far more careful and deliberate about their social media use at minimum, and best case scenario could include legislation, which a different survey found that 68% of parents would support for social media users under 18. There were profoundly positive results from studies into Alzheimer's that were published in 2024. I'll link to one in the description. And now our final story of the evening, my favorite. Beavers are back. In February 2025, efforts in the UK to reintroduce beavers to the natural forest and woodlands after being hunted to extinction over 100 years ago have finally paid off, and a law was passed which resulted in permitted release of wild beavers back into the Little Sea Lake in Studland. This is obviously great because beavers rule, but this is a landmark decision in rewilding, which is a super interesting and, in my opinion, awesome approach to an environmental issues which you should totally read about. That's all for this edition of Shameless Nerd News Network. I'm Bobby Moynihan. Until next time, thanks for joining us. One of my guiding core principles is to think about what our oppressive, technocratic corporate overlords in the government would like me to do, and then do the opposite. If I'm some evil shadow corporate lobbyist turned government official who wants money and cares about nothing else, what I want is a populace of citizens who do not believe that change is possible. They are isolated, they spend all day on their phones where I can feed them advertisements for my ever-increasing array of products available for purchase. They are sad and tired and believe that they are screwed. They are upset with how things are going, so they'll need to buy more stuff to try to fill the hole while they emulate the algorithmically curated consumeristic personalities platformed by my social media sites, but they're hopeless that things could ever be better. They are disillusioned, divided, cynical, pessimistic. And if that's what they want, I will do everything in my power to do and be the opposite. I believe that the future is bright, the world is beautiful, that humanity is good, that society is salvageable. And I hope that you will consider the same. Thanks for watching. See y'all next time. Hello? One of my recent videos did far better than any video I've ever posted, and in its far higher reach, I received a lot of feedback that I want to address in regard to how they relate to this video and my channel as a whole. First of all, one of the few negative comments I received a few times talked about me wasting people's time in the intro, and to that I just want to say, skip ahead in the video. But the reason why I do the intros the way that I do is multifaceted. First of all, I want my channel to maintain its original purpose for me, which was having fun making videos, having a creative outlet. I want my viewers to get to see a real person enjoying what he's doing, being silly, having fun while talking about stuff that they want to hear about. And to me, part of that is coming up with a fun, silly intro. Secondly, preambles are important. Ask the Constitution. I want to normalize interacting with the video and nuance in what we consume. If you don't like the intro, I would love for you to skip it. If you don't like something I say, maybe you'll find value in something else I say, and the video could very well be worth entertaining either way. The idea that everything we consume should be tailored to our specific desires, attention spans, and ideological platforms is, I think, a major problem. I love a lot of YouTubers who do paid endorsement sections. I'm skipping them every time. I've learned a ton from podcast guests that I disagree with and authors of books who I don't like. I think that stuff is important. If you don't like the intro, skip it. That's totally fine. I'll start putting the timestamp in there for you to skip it. If you don't like something I say, that's good. There are over 1,000 comments on that Angry Birds video, and almost half of them are from me. I had a great time having some passionate debates in those comments. It was awesome. That's what this is all about. Thirdly, the call to action in the beginning, the way that I always start my videos with a silly quip about subscribing to the channel and considering liking the video, is because that call to action makes a massive difference in getting people to like videos and subscribe to channels. And algorithms algorithmically, that incentivizes YouTube's evil shadow controller algorithm to show my stuff to more people. This is why massive YouTube channels interrupt your videos 10 times to beg you to like and subscribe, but I don't want to do that. So I do it once in the beginning as a compromise, and then I don't have any more interruptions in my video. This video is an exception, but generally I also try to make my intros about the same length, about 1.5 to 2 minutes. So people who watch my stuff regularly and already have subscribed and are likely to like the video can just skip ahead if they don't want to sit through the whole 2 minutes. And fourthly, I personally like when things I watch have a consistent intro pattern. I love HiveMind, for example, and they do something similar with their stuff. And when you click on a video and you start watching it, it immediately feels like something they made, and you grow comfortable with that pattern, and it's nice, and I just like it, okay? The other complaint I got on occasion on that video is that I am verbose or wordy or talk a lot, and to that I just want to say, I mean, you're totally right. Like, you're totally right. That is who I am, and I'm always gonna be that way. But also, one of the core principles of this channel and my philosophy is that nuance is super important, and foregoing detail and nuance for the sake of getting more directly to the point is kind of one of the main problems we face, in my opinion. One of the reasons why we are so politically polarized, one of the reasons why our attention spans are on a downward trajectory, one of the reasons why we're so stressed out and frantic all the time. It's okay to slow down and to be a little meandering for the sake of being thorough. It's okay to think about stuff from multiple angles, and it's okay to take 2 minutes and 13 seconds to establish myself as a moderately credible source on what I'm talking about before I start talking about it. That was definitely the weirdest and most frustrating feedback I received on that video. Do we not want the people from whom we're taking information to be credible? Do we really not care about that? But to the incomprehensible number of people who like that video, and the over 5,000 of you who have now subscribed to my channel and care about what I say at all, I genuinely do not know how to express how grateful I am and how cool this has been. Thank you so much. Anyway, thanks for watching. See y'all next time.